Here we are, another back lane, who knows where in the city of Melbourne, somewhere in the CBD. And it's a little bit hard to think about what we're going to talk about, but I just thought, usually at the beginning of the year there's a lot of depression and anger and hatred and vilification, and people's frustrations boil over. You know, their New Year, they've broken their New Year's resolutions by this time of the year, and things don't look very good. So I want to talk about hope. Yeah, I know, and I sound like some type of religious nut, but hope is the love child. That's right, it's a love child. It's not having been married by the state or the church. Hope is the love child of desire and expectation. The desire for change and the expectation that change will occur. And that's the key, the expectation that change will occur. Now, those in authority, that small section of society that owns the means of production, distribution, exchange and communication, and all those people with the disposable income, about 9% of Australians who invest in shares and stocks and negative gear, second, third and fourth homes, make a little bit of money out of actually having disposable income. I don't think they need hope. Well, they do hope that people like you and me won't revolt. They do hope that people like you and me continue to be angry and frustrated and depressed. And they do hope that we continue to blame the other, the Indigenous Australian, the migrant, the asylum seeker, the refugee, the person with funny hair, the bloke with a long beard, women wearing funny hats, that type of thing. They hope that we continue to fight amongst each other. It's a little bit like this. Picture society as this. There's this table with these long legs, and sitting around these table are all these well-dressed and well-heeled men and women. That's right, not just men, but men and women counting the loot, right? And down the bottom there's this mass of ants, which is you and me. Hundreds of thousands of people milling, and occasionally we touch the leg of the table and it wobbles a bit, and they just scrape a few crumbs off the table, throw them on the ground, and we fight amongst each other to grab the crumbs and say, hallelujah, the system works. Isn't life great? Well, the reality is that while we're devoid of hope, and while we're fighting amongst ourselves, and while we think the other is the problem, we never have the time to channel our anger and our frustration into action, to actually challenge those people who wield power in our society. We never have that time because we're too busy fighting amongst ourselves for the crumbs which are swept off the corporate and the federal table for us, to scramble after. And it's not just in Australia, it's around the world. It's the same story, irrespective of your colour, your nationality, your race, your gender. It's the same. It's this inequality which is the key that actually explains the situation we're in. So hope is based on the idea of challenging your annoyance and your frustration and your anger into action which challenges those in authority. It can be a small action, it can be a large action. But if there's no challenge, there's no change. To me, a radical activist or a reformist is a little bit like, using a bushfire analogy, which may not be appropriate at this time of the year, but you've got little embers. After a bushfire, you've got little embers that are still there, and they continue to be there, and then the conditions change, the forest regrows, the undergrowth increases, temperatures increase because of the climate emergency, and those embers capture the forest floor and the fire starts again, a raging inferno. It's the same with reform and radical change. People like you and me, we're embers. We're sitting there. We're fanning those embers. We're trying to get other people to become involved with us. Whether it's becoming a member of public interest before corporate interest, whether it's going to an event, whether it's organising your own protest, whether it's standing outside your local bank with a card saying thieves, robbers. I had a friend who was ripped off by one of the banks. Ripped off badly 25 years ago, and he rings me 48 hours ago. He's in the pits of depression because the bank has sent the police around and they're going to charge him with stalking, right? This is a man who's been brutally ripped off, and it's the very people who are ripping him off are using the system to oppress him. And I said to him, if there's any charges, let us know and we'll organise a campaign to assist you. And it's as simple as that, as giving somebody a little bit of assistance, whether it's physical assistance, financial assistance. It's as easy as walking down the street and seeing somebody who's begging, putting your hand in your pocket and giving them a few coins or a few dollars or a $50 note, depending on what's in your pocket, instead of ignoring them or turning away or walking away. I know it's a bit corny, but they say hope springs eternal. And it does spring eternal, because every social movement has been created on the back of hope. That hope that change will occur. Not only that it will occur, that we want it to occur. I mean, there are a lot of silent Australians, and Scotty from advertising, our current Prime Minister, a man whose ambitions are much, much, much more than his talents, considering his pathetic response to the current bushfire emergency. I mean, people like him don't want you to have hope. They want you to get depressed. Have you ever thought why in Australia in the 21st century, when we're supposed to be so well off, there is so much depression and anxiety, not just among the poor, but among middle classes and the rich and the super rich? Why is there so much depression and anger? Maybe there's no purpose in existence. You know, amassing money may not be the essence of having a good life. Amassing goods may not be the essence of having a good life. Maybe having a religious belief is not the essence of having a good life. You know, believing in fairies at the bottom of the garden may not be the essence of good life. I mean, to me, the essence of good life is to be able to live in a community where everybody is part of that decision-making process, where everybody shares the commonwealth of that community. For example, yesterday some research, remarkable research came out which nobody else will be talking about. They may mention it, but within 2 or 3 hours it'll disappear. In the 1980s, if you looked at the top 15% of income earners in Australia and then compared them with the bottom 15% of income earners in Australia, the chances of somebody from the bottom 15% of Australians reaching the age of 75 was 40% less than somebody from the top income bracket. Put the clock forward 40 years, 2019, and the research is just remarkable. It's just extraordinary. Even I, an old cynic, hard-boiled cynic like me, was shocked. In 2019, if you compare the chances of somebody in the bottom 15% and the top 15% reaching the age of 75, people in the top income bracket, the top 15%, have an 80% greater chance of reaching the age of 75 than somebody in the lower 15%. Don't tell me it's about personal choice. Life expectancy has nothing to do with personal choice. It's about income. It's about income distribution. It's about despair. It's about frustration. It's about anger spilling into depression. And I'm sure many of the people watching this will feel depressed. They'll feel, what's the point? Nothing's ever going to change. Nothing will ever change. But things do change. Sometimes they change slowly. Sometimes they change rapidly when those embers capture a forest which is ready for change. Maybe the quiet Australian should actually be looking at this situation, that 60% of Australians, 65% of Australians who pay their taxes, work hard, look after their children, look after their ageing parents, are part of their community, who are treated as losers by society today. Maybe that 60-70% of Australians should look at, why am I spending all my life paying off a mortgage? Why am I spending all my life paying 600 to 700% more than I paid for a roof over my head? Why should I continue to be employed on short-term contracts? Why should I be anxious about losing my job? Why should I be worried about, crime? Why should I be concerned about my children's future? Why should I be concerned about climate change and an impending climate emergency? Maybe those 60 to 70% of Australians who form the bulk, they're not part of the 15% at the bottom and the 15% at the top who know their place in society, the ones who will make a difference, whose children are now going out on the streets to protest about climate change. Why shouldn't they be looking at their lives and thinking, maybe things could be different? Maybe we could organise the society in a different way. Maybe capitalism, an economic system where you rely on increasing growth, increasing profits, irrespective of the human, social, environmental and national costs. Maybe that is not the basis of a good society. Maybe that's why I feel so stressed and I'm going to the psychologist and I'm popping pills and I'm depressed. Maybe if you've got a social depression or a reactive depression, which is a fancy word for saying not a depression which is deep within inside you, which you were born with, but you have a depression which is due to external circumstances, maybe it's time to address those circumstances, not just as an individual. There are no individual solutions to community problems. Maybe you should start getting involved in action. And if you don't like what you see, maybe it's about time you got organised. It doesn't take long for those who exercise power to understand the power of people protesting, the power of people making a stand, the power of people demanding a better life for themselves and their children. They would like you to stay depressed. A depressed population is not a restive population. So if you're frustrated, if you're angry, if you're annoyed, don't slip into a reactive depression because of the situation you find yourself in. There are no individual solutions to your problems. It doesn't matter how many psychologists you will see, there are no individual solutions. We need to find community-based solutions to community-based problems. Those statistics that came out regarding the chances of the bottom 15% of income and the top 50% of income reaching the age of 75 highlights that the path we have trodden as a nation over the last 4 decades, the deregulation path where we've removed regulations to assist business, the privatisation path where everybody pays, creating a user pay system, not where there is cross-subsidisation for people who can't afford resources, the globalisation phase that we've pushed where we'll do our manufacturing where we pay people the lowest wage, God knows where, and the corporatisation phase, which means is when you walk into a major shopping mall, almost every shop outlet is part of some corporation or franchise. I mean, we don't have to live like that. We don't have to accept it. We don't have to accept the crumbs being brushed off the corporate table. We can cut off one leg of that table and everything that's on that table will spill out onto the ground, and we don't have to fight amongst ourselves and grab what we can and run away. We can collectively use those resources to collectively solve the problems of the people who have lost their soul.